Welcome back. In a CBC article earlier this year, Children's Aid Society of Toronto said there is a sustained need for Muslim caregivers in the GTA. Responding to this call was Shahzad Mustafa, the project founder and director of Fosterling, an initiative of Mercy Mission Canada. The project's mission is to increase awareness, facilitate intake, and provide support to Muslim foster caregivers. Welcome to the show, Shahzad.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Aisha. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks. So I want to start by, we're talking about Fosterling, so we'll get into a little bit about, why you do that work. But what was it that triggered, I need to do something about foster parenting or helping children's aid societies with Muslim families? What triggered that for you?
Yeah, certainly. So I guess, the story goes back about a year. This was late last year. And a local rep from Children's Aid Society in York Region, which is where I live, came to our mosque, and he gave a very passionate speech. And he basically said that in our entire region, we have Muslim children in care, but we only have one Muslim family that's registered with Children's Aid in York Region.
As a foster parent?
As a certified foster family. And he left some literature and basically said, listen, we're reaching out to communities, minority communities, from various backgrounds, encouraging them to be more, to participate more in foster care. So when I sort of got that literature, I was kind of, perturbed that, why is it that our community is not participating in this movement? And it kind of took me back maybe about 25 years, because when I was much younger in university, my mother had brought in 3 kids into our home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a tragedy in our community. There was a domestic violence situation, and Children's Aid had removed 3 kids from the family. It was very, very tragic. And so there were no Muslim families within our region that were certified. So my parents said, listen, we will do it, right? So they were kind of fast-tracked through the system. And these 3 beautiful kids lived with us for about 3 months.
Oh, wow.
8-year-old girl and 2 young siblings, boys. And, it kind of had a profound effect on my life, because, we shared our home. We shared our love, our food, our space with these kids. And we also were somewhat witness to the trauma that they faced. Clearly they did see a lot of violence in the home. So, it really made a connection. And I said, subhanAllah, we should open our homes to those who are less fortunate. And it wasn't really that hard. They were with us for about 3 months. And then they were eventually repatriated with their uncles in Pakistan. But during that crucial time, they had a safe space to be in, right?
Just to clarify, I guess maybe for some of our viewers who might not know what a foster parent is, I just want to clarify. So what is a foster family?
So there is a crisis. There is a crisis in Canada, and in fact in the entire world, where there are a huge number of children that are without families due to a number of different reasons, right? Obviously, overseas we see conflict, we see poverty, we see instability in many countries around the world, resulting in a lot of orphan kids. In North America and in Canada, we also see families breaking up. Some families simply do not work, right? There might be poverty issues, addiction issues, violence issues, mental health issues, a myriad of issues that causes children to be unsafe in their homes. So these children are then basically brought into custody by the Children's Aid Society, and then they need to be placed in a safe space. Now, in the old days, we used to have this concept of orphanages, right? Orphanages were these big homes where all these kids are jammed in there. But that model no longer is the best for children. What's best for children is to live in a family environment. So foster families are basically volunteers. They are paid a little bit for the service that they provide, that have been trained and checked out, and all the background check has been done. They basically open up their homes to allow a child to live with their family for a short or an extended period of time. So a foster family is basically a family that brings in kids on a temporary basis into their home.
And to support them as they transition and the Children's Aid Society sort of figure out a permanent solution for them.
Yeah. So in most cases, children do go back to their biological parents once their situation has been stabilized. In many cases, children remain sort of in the system until they're 18 years old.
Yeah.
When they're 18, then they're basically out of the system.
Now, just going back to children's aid societies,
Yeah.
you know, I was reading an article where they did say that they need more Muslim families.
Yes.
But thinking about it from the perspective of the child,
Yes.
from a cultural identity perspective,
Yeah.
why is that so crucial?
Yeah, so there is definitely so there's two angles to this, right? One is that the number of foster families is decreasing, right? So just to give you an example.
Like across the board?
Across the board, right? So foster families are getting older, and as they're getting older, they're getting less able to continue that service that they're providing. There's less of an interest in the younger generation to step up to that role. And this is not just with the Muslim community, but right across the board, right? You know, in 2014-15 period, there were roughly 21,000 plus kids in care in Ontario only, and about only 6,800 homes, right? And that actually dropped down by 2,000 homes from 4 years back. So the system is getting taxed, and they are finding it very difficult to find homes for kids. Now, so the second angle now is cultural compatibility, right? So from children's aid's perspective, they want to put children in homes that are most conducive to their development. And the notion that, you know, put them in a home that is culturally or religiously compatible with who they are will preserve their identity more and be a more of a nurturing environment for them. So they've recognized that is a need. Obviously, some of our Muslim children or children of South Asian background or Afro-Caribbean background, indigenous background, those, especially from indigenous and Afro-Caribbean, there's a lot of kids in the system, not enough homes to take them in, right? So that's why Children's Aid is reaching out to, minority communities to enlist more of them into the foster care movement.
Now, just on that topic, maybe not a lot of people talk about it, but there is a stigma that. And I had a conversation with a few friends back in the, recently actually, about, the idea of foster families is important and we need that service, 100% agree.
Yes.
But what do you do in a situation where, say you go through the process, you become certified, but the thing that's holding you back is once you become certified, say you get a child that has, severe behavioral issues or what have you,
right.
And say you have kids of your own, and there's a sense of not fear, but you're worried that how will that, how will that implicate my child's development? And I know that's sort of a hesitation, I think, for some. Yes. How do you address that stigma, you think?
Well, I personally have not seen stigma or
maybe not stigma, but there's that. That fear that people don't talk about, but it's there, right? They'll talk about it within their close circles, but no one's going to come out and say that.
Yeah. So, number one is that foster care is not for everyone, right? It's a very niche area, and that's why there might be hundreds of people in our works that in the efforts that we're doing in terms of marketing and promoting foster care within the Muslim community. We got a lot of people who are interested. A lot of people come out to our events. A lot of people attend our webinars and so on and so on and so forth. But when we get down to a certain commitment to actually go through the intake process, very few people go through that. And that's by design, because foster care is demanding. It's not for everyone. And those families that truly have it in their heart to give a safe space to a vulnerable child, those are the families that find this job to be very fulfilling. All the Muslims that I've spoken to that do provide foster care, within the GTA, they've said that it's been transformative for their own lives. In fact, it's benefited their own family life because the kind of training that they get on how to deal with children and how to deal with issues like behavioral issues and so on and so forth has helped them to help their own kids, and it's actually created better relationships between the husband and wife because now they're kind of living a purpose, which is to take care of these kids.
It sounds like it's a rigorous process. It's not just, hey, I'm interested. All right, there you go. Next day you get a child.
Absolutely. So when if you're interested in foster care, what we do what FosterLink does is we go through some pre-screening. So we conduct an interview on the phone, and we basically we'll walk you through a checklist of things that Children's Aid will want to know from you. They do a lot of background checks. They want to do financial checks, full medical checks, criminal background checks, including international criminal checks. They'll come to your home. They'll ask you about your private life. They'll speak to every single member of your family, right? And so if you have that intention to really do this for the sake of for the sake of your child, for the sake of children, for the sake of vulnerable children, and you're doing it for a very noble reason, and you stick with it, you'll be very successful going through this. But the challenge is that a lot of people do kind of come in and then they get a little bit you know, scared off, right? So again, it's not for everyone. You know, obviously you need a home that has space in the home. Many of the families that we're talking to, you know, are of different types. You have some people that don't have children at all for whatever reason. Some potential foster families are older couples that whose children have already grown up and left the home, and now they've got some space and some love still in their heart for kids. You know, hopefully their kids haven't burnt them out yet. And then other families do have children in the home, and they're able to bring more children in. Now, in terms of the fear, Children's Aid is very clear, as well as all the agencies that we've worked with, is that the ultimate decision maker is the family itself. So the family decides, what kind of child do I want in my home?
Okay, so they have that
absolutely. The family decides that, you know, for whatever reason, if their life circumstances change and they can no longer maintain this child, they can ask Children's Aid to take the child back if things become that bad. So there is a lot of there is a lot of consideration on the needs of the foster family. At the end of the day, the system does not want to burn out families because families are very few and they're beginning to become less and less in number, right? So there's a lot of deference towards the needs of the families.
I think that's really helpful that you shared sort of an overview of the issue.
Yes.
So let's talk about FosterLink.
Yes.
So how did the idea come up? I know you mentioned when you know, someone from Children's Aid came and talked about the issue. How did you start FosterLink?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's both a personal journey, but also the work that I do in nonprofit work. So I work with an organization called Mercy Mission. Mercy Mission is an organization that tries to bring together young men and women of the Muslim faith, as well as others that share our values, towards a common good, right? So what we tend to do is we tend to look at certain gaps that exist in our community and try to innovate solutions, projects, programs, and so on. And so, for example, we've successfully incubated and have now built a proper organization around the administration of zakat, the National Zakat Foundation, as you may know. Anisa Helpline, which is for women's counseling needs. It's running as a separate organization. We were running new Muslim care services for quite a while. So these are the kind of things that we tend to do. So I was kind of looking for a new mission. You know, in Mercy Mission, I kind of have an oversight role, but I said, you know what, it's about time I get my hands dirty a little bit and actually start something off on my own. So foster care was something that I felt was something that I could maybe make a difference, you know, in my community. So then I reached out, you know, I basically messaged our groups and a number of other brothers and sisters in our sort of network of volunteers said, you know what, I'm interested in working with you. So that way we came together. In fact, I was quite surprised. A number of volunteers that came were themselves foster parents.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we had
that you didn't know.
I knew them personally, but I didn't know that they were foster families.
Wow.
Right? So they came, they shared their stories. There was a lot of you know positive chemistry. You know, a lot of you know, it kind of made things concrete for me because you know I personally, you know, my family did foster care when we were quite young, but it's been quite a long time since I've been involved in that movement. So so we got these families together. We said, you know what, let's just start something very modest. We connected with a very good private fostering agency, Maple Star Services. We had an initial agreement with them to run a project over the summer. You know, where we would basically do a lot of outreach in our community. We would do the initial intake, and then we would pass on referrals to them. Over the summer, we got a couple of summer students. We got funded for some summer students through the Canada Job Program, Canada Summer Jobs Program, which is a very good program for nonprofits. Those two students came in. One of the students, she did a lot of marketing, which resulted in a lot of media coverage for us. The other student was more on the inside. She was doing a lot of the intake. So we did a lot of activity in the summer. Now that the fall has come, we're now kind of reworking our strategy a little bit and figuring out our next steps.
And just to clarify, the role of FosterLink is not to help families. I guess your role is not, you don't serve as another Children's Aid Society.
No. We're not an agency. And our strategy was not to even think about going down that route, right? I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. I'm a big believer in not isolating our community and trying to do everything ourselves. I believe in smart integration, right? So what I say is, listen, children's aid, yeah, they might be a little bit antiquated. Maybe maybe they don't have enough diversity within their ranks. But you know what? They've got a huge infrastructure, right? It's better for us to work with them, but then bring in our concerns to the table by providing some leadership for within our own community, right? So, and it's also within capacity as well. We're not very well funded, so we can only do what we do, which is really outreach, which is really education. We're not a placement agency. We don't certify families. We simply educate, inspire, and then kind of pre-qualify families and then bring them into the agency. So then they take over. They provide all the certification training and all the placement. We keep in touch with the family to provide ongoing support.
So more of a support system connector.
So, yeah, education, intake, and support.
And just as we wrap up, sort of bringing the Islamic perspective into this, what onus do you think, or why do you think the Muslim community needs to step up to the plate, other than the fact that there is a need? Some people might be like, okay, well, other people are there. From an Islamic perspective, what responsibility do you think we as Muslims have? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, for me, it's a huge responsibility. So number one is that the notion of taking care of vulnerable children is heavily messaged in our faith. God Almighty in the Quran is constantly talking about looking after the orphans, yatim, right? Again, in the North American context, we don't use the word orphan anymore. So that's why Muslims, they get disconnected between the classical word orphan and foster kids. They think they're different. But the scholars that we've talked to, they said, no, it's the same concept. You have children who are not being able to be supported by the biological parents, so the community needs to step up, right? So that's number one. We know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself was a foster parent, right? He had a foster son within his family, right? Zayd bin Haritha, right? Who was who used to live as his own child, but eventually he was repatriated with his father when he showed up later on. But nevertheless, the Prophet ﷺ himself looked after the orphans, looked after kids whose parents were no longer around. So it's heavily commendable thing to do, is to look after kids. Now, but the second angle is that foster care requires a lot of sacrifice, right? So as Muslims, we might be very good at maybe giving money to a cause, or maybe that's about it. But what we really have a hard time with is sacrificing for a cause, right? Is to do the dirty work, which is to allow people to come into our home, right? But you know what? I think Islam requires us to do that as well. Is to sometimes go beyond our comfort zone, make an intention to please your Creator by doing something for a child that perhaps no one else will, and then opening up your door, bringing someone in. I was really touched by Canadian Muslims who brought in Syrian refugees and sponsored them and put out thousands of dollars from their own hard-earned income to bring in Syrian families from overseas. Now, for me, that's sacrifice, right? That's sacrifice.
And it's not just been Muslims, it's been other
and everybody,
Canadians,
right? And it brought people into their own homes. For me, that's sacrifice. So we, as a community, do need to sacrifice a little bit more. And I guess the other angle is that many of these children are Muslims, right? So many of these children are Muslims, and they are being raised in very good homes, very good caregivers who are not of the Islamic faith, which means that they cannot always provide the environment that these children need to maintain their identity, right? So now Foster Link does not say that we're all about Muslim children. We say that it's about our children and all children. Most of the Muslim foster families that I've interacted with have brought in children of all backgrounds into their home, right? Which is quite surprising, because I kind of came in not thinking that. And so that's what we want to encourage. Right, and again, we need to be part of the solution. We live in this country. We need to be part of the solution and not just be on the sidelines complaining about Children's Aid Society, but not really participating in helping to alleviate the lack of foster caregivers.
Well, thank you to you and your organization for bringing light to this issue and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.